Crimes are bad. Bad for the victim, bad for society. And they reek of injustice. Yet sometimes the injustice is so overwhelming that it serves to unite people, a silver lining in an otherwise harrowing event. Today we are here to discuss a case that portrays just that. A case where the echo of a family's heartache and determination reverberates across continents, uniting strangers in a cause that went beyond cultures. This is not just another story of a crime, but a narrative of resilience, justice, and the shared human spirit that surfaces in the darkest of times. This is the story of Hannah Foster, an innocent girl who found herself at the wrong place at the wrong time and brought two nations together. Hi everyone, welcome to Desi Crime, a show where we dive deep into some of the craziest cases from around South Asia. I'm your host Aryaan.
And I'm Aishwarya.
And the case that we have for you today marks one of the first instances of extradition from India.
Aryaan, that's so interesting. It's been a few cases here and there, but we've definitely covered cases that involve extradition. Such a complex process, such
Very
an arduous process.
Bureaucratic, paperwork.
And makes every case so much more like long drawn delays justice. So I'm excited to see what happens in this one. But all of you, if you want to be extradited out of Aryaan's basement, I urge you, go subscribe to us right now. Apparently 80% or some of you aren't subscribed to the YouTube channel. So go do that. The button's somewhere here. For your own safety, go subscribe.
I don't have anybody in my basement.
I mean, go read the comments on any YouTube video. They say otherwise.
Let's get to it. Chapter 1. Life is Beautiful. Located approximately 100 kilometers from London, Southampton stands as one of the most populous cities in southern England. It was here, in this bustling urban setting, that Hannah Foster lived with her younger sister Sarah and her parents Hilary and Trevor. March 16, 2003 was a day of celebration in their household as Hannah achieved straight A's in her A-levels. A-levels, or advanced levels, are rigorous pre-university exams in the UK, comparable to board exams in India. So acing them is comparable to acing the boards, which is a big deal. But Hannah was just as social as she was an academic. She regularly hung out with her friends, explored the city of Southampton, and went to pubs. Life seemed perfect for 17-year-old Hannah. With her stellar grades, she was well on her way to becoming a doctor, a dream supported by her loving family and a close circle of friends. Known for her kindness and generosity, Hannah was seen by those around her as someone who was not only destined to help others, but who genuinely sought to make a difference in the world. In fact, when asked about her, one of her previous classmates said, quote, "I went to school with Hannah and she was the nicest person I ever met. I was bullied relentlessly for my entire time at that school, but she was one of the few that always was nice to me." End quote. Everything was lining up for her and the bright future she had ahead of her. This will all come to an abrupt stop on March 16th. To celebrate one of her most significant academic achievements, Hannah and her best friend Helen decided to go out on that fateful Friday. Like many 17-year-olds eager to savor the freedoms of youth, they planned a night out, a bit of partying and perhaps some underage drinking. The innocent revelries of teenagers on the brink of adulthood. Nothing harmful or out of bounds, just skirting around the law that would permit her to drink in a couple of months anyways. The girls first went to a local pub called The Hobbit and soon left to visit another bar nearby called Sobar. At around 10:40 p.m, Hannah and her best friend left Sobar and walked to the nearest bus stop. Helen lived farther away and needed to catch a bus home. True to her kind and considerate nature, Hannah decided to stay with her until the bus departed. Once Helen was safely on her way, Hannah began her walk home. Merely 800 meters, roughly a 10-minute journey tops. It was a familiar path, one she had traversed countless times, just 10 minutes from the safety and comfort of the home she has grown up in. At 5:30 in the morning, when Hilary Foster, Hannah's mother, woke up for her job as a nurse at Southampton General Hospital, she noticed that Hannah was not home yet. The porch light that she had turned on last night for her daughter to come home to was still on, and Hannah's bedroom has not been slept in. As any parent of a nearly adult teenager might think, this wasn't immediately alarming. It was a Saturday morning, and Hannah had been out with her friends the night before. Maybe she was with Helen, or maybe she is still out having fun. Hannah, you see, was a responsible girl. She would never do anything so reckless, and continuing with that chain of thought, Hilary went on with her regular morning routine. But an hour later, at about 6:30 am, Hilary sent a text to Hannah, which was followed by multiple phone calls. Remember, this was the early 2000s. While cell phones existed, they weren't as advanced as they were today. There was no Find My to track Hannah's location. Growing increasingly worried, Hilary just wished that she could get hold of her daughter, wished she could hear her voice telling her she just slept over at Helen's and lost track of time. But none of those things happened. Sarah, Hannah's younger sister, called Helen to ask about her sister, but she replied that Hannah dropped her off at the bus station and planned on walking home after that. By 10:30 am, Hannah's father Trevor had come home from his work and decided to call the police and inform them that Hannah had not returned home from the night before. It had been over 12 hours since Hannah left the house, and over 12 hours since her best friend Helen saw her last. This was Hannah. She always calls. She always comes back on time. She is Hilary and Trevor's responsible little girl. Where could she be? Chapter 2. Have you seen Foster? The police reacted swiftly, which is unusual in cases involving missing young adults. Typically, such cases are met with assumptions that the young person ran away, possibly overwhelmed by the pressures of transitioning into adulthood. Like the case was with Reena Virk, right? The police didn't take her disappearance seriously.
Yeah, and that happens countless times, especially with, obviously in Reena Virk's case, girls from troubled homes, girls who had run away in the past. But from Hannah's record, it sounds like there's every reason to take this seriously, just as it was for cases like Praveen Varghese.
True. Like Aishwarya said, Hannah's case was different. The police responded promptly, thoroughly searching the path she was supposed to take on her way back home. The Southampton police began a door-to-door investigation, asking neighbours if they had seen Hannah or heard anything unusual from the night before. Quote, "My boyfriend and I were at uni at the time and lived on the same street as her home in Portswood. We were interviewed by the police the morning following her abduction. We were then asked to come in for a more in-depth interview a few days later," recalled one of the neighbours. Despite these efforts, no one had seen or heard from Hannah. On a street filled with houses and people, it was as if she had vanished without a trace right under everyone's noses. This, however, did not discourage the police from dedicating their full attention to the case. Hannah was a minor, only 17 years old, which added urgency to their efforts. They pursued the next significant lead, Hannah's mobile phone. The text messages Hilary had been sending to her daughter were still going through, indicating that the phone was still on. In the early 2000s, when GPS technology was not as advanced as it is today, the police's best strategy was to track the cell tower from which Hannah's phone was pinging. You see, whenever a text or call is received, it connects through a cell tower, allowing them to narrow down the cell phone's approximate location. When police were successfully able to track Hannah's location and access her phone records, what they found stunned them. You see, Hannah's phone was not pinging from just one cell tower. In fact, it had been moving well into the early hours of the morning. They suspected that Hannah was moving faster than anyone can walk. Hannah was in a car. If you know anything about kidnapping cases and self-defense, the biggest takeaway is that when the victim is moved to a second location, the chances of finding them become 0 to none. But the Fosters still clung to hope, believing that their daughter would be fine, and this was all just a huge misunderstanding. Except that their hopes were shattered when the police examined the most recently dialed phone number. Hannah's last call was to 999. 999 is the emergency number for the UK. Hannah was in grave danger. The call did connect to the emergency operator, sparking hope for everyone that it might provide vital clues, but this hope quickly faded. While the call connected, there was no clear response from Hannah, only indistinct background noise. The operator moved the call to something known as the silent solutions as part of protocol to keep the main line clear. Silent solutions is established to differentiate between a butt dial and an actual emergency where the victim cannot speak, as is activated after 30 to 45 seconds of inactivity from the other end. When no reply was received even from silent solutions, the call was disconnected.
I know this makes me so sad because this is a young child who is trying to contact the police, right? And we know again from cases of kidnapping that those first few hours are so vital. And with every
Too crucial.
passing hour, right, the
Yeah.
odds of a child surviving are significantly reduced. And so this is so scary that she's actually trying to call out for help, but something's going wrong.
And even while researching this case, firstly, I think silent solutions is a great concept to both keep the main line clear, which is important because you can't just respond to because there are so many
Of
butt dials
course,
these
right,
emergency
right,
numbers
right.
receive. But at the same time, trying to
Having a specific team for like a
Team-
specific kind of
exactly.
situation, yeah.
Except it's so disheartening to know that even the silent solutions protocol is only there for 30 to 45 seconds,
Yeah.
after which it too disconnects. Like you can't infinitely have a call
Have a
playing
call running.
because it
That
could
makes
be
sense,
anything.
right.
I wish there was a solution for this because had the call remained active,
Maybe
maybe
something
something could have
yeah.
happened. Following is a transcript of the call.
You belong this country?
Yeah.
England?
Yeah, I'm English. Yeah, my name is...
Huh?
My name is Sarah.
Sarah,
Yeah.
I want that to be to do
15?
15?
Yeah.
What 15?
15. That's my road. That was where I live.
Live there?
Yes.
I can't. There.
Yeah.
Hold your head down, please.
Sorry. No.
Where you live? Which number you live?
Huh? Listen. Anything?
It was a chilling moment captured in the fragments of a desperate call for help. Hannah found herself in the presence of someone who made her deeply uncomfortable. This call, a lifeline in a moment of distress, was an indicator of the terror that had befallen her, just 800 meters from the safety of her home. But who was this person, with a broken English accent that hinted at a South Asian man? What drove Hannah to such fear that she lied about her age and her name? The transcript revealed a haunting command, quote, "Hold your head down." It was a phrase that confirmed the worst fears of everyone involved. Despite the efforts of law enforcement, this clue was but a needle in a haystack, offering little concrete evidence to follow. The pieces of the puzzle were frustratingly scattered, leaving a void in the search for answers about Hannah Foster's fate. With a sense of urgency, the police sprang into action. Their mission was clear: scour the CCTV footage to identify the motor vehicle responsible for her disappearance. It was a daunting task, with thousands of vehicles passing through the locations. Cars, trucks, buses, and more blurred past a sea of possibilities that needed to be narrowed down to one. But the Southampton police did their job, and God did they do it right. Starting from Portsmouth, where Hannah's phone had last signaled its presence, they searched didn't stop there. They combed through Portswood Road, the very street from which Hannah had been taken. Just in a few hours, the police spotted some vans. 7 vans that had been in all the locations around the time that matched Hannah's phone records. Usually a task like this would take days on end to go through CCTV footage, spot similarities tangible enough to be noteworthy, but the urgency of the case and the exceptional handling of it by the police made it possible on the very first day of the investigation.
Aryaan, also interestingly, and I learned this fact while writing my thesis paper on free speech back in the US, the UK is the top 3rd country in the world in terms of the most number of CCTV surveillance cameras.
Okay.
And so it makes it like, sure, it's state surveillance on you and so much data collection on its citizens, but it comes to use in situations like these where they need this information to find people that are lost.
I'm sure. I'm guessing the country with the highest CCTV cameras is probably like China.
US and China on the top, and then the UK is the 3rd.
I mean, those are the pros and cons of having so
Absolutely.
too much surveillance, right? But thanks to being the country with the 3rd highest number of CCTV cameras, the police finally had a strong lead, a lead worth pursuing and possibly bringing Hillary's little girl home. Things were looking up before it all came crashing down. On March 16th of 2003, only 24 hours after Hannah Foster was registered as missing, her body was found by a 14-year-old.
No.
Hannah was found on M27 highway, just 15 feet away from the main highway in the bushes. Her autopsy revealed that she had been beaten, sexually assaulted, and then strangled to death. The toxicology report showed that she had no alcohol in her system. She had scratch marks on her neck to prevent her attacker from strangling her. The traces of semen on her clothes were unidentified in the system, meaning the person who committed it did not have any track record. When Hillary was asked to officially come in, she said, quote, "I could not believe what I was seeing. there must have been some mistake. The cold, battered, and bruised body did look like Hannah, but where was the sparkle in her eyes, the radiant smile, the warmth of her touch? Hannah was so radiant, gentle, vibrant, and alive. Why Hannah? She had so much to live for. End quote. The Foster family had been celebrating their eldest daughter's promising future as a doctor just 48 hours ago. Now they were confronted with the devastating sight of Hannah's lifeless body, robbed of her dreams, her ambitions, her kindness, and everything that made her Hannah Foster. Chapter 3: Crime Stoppers. The police launched a relentless pursuit of the killer, initiating a public appeal and media campaign. Their efforts paid off when Hannah's phone and bag were discovered in a recycling bin in Portsmouth. Subsequently, a candlelight vigil was held in her honor, highlighting the depth of love and respect she garnered in her community. The case gained national attention when it was featured on BBC's Crime Watch on March 26th, much like our late-night crime shows such as Crime Patrol, Saavdhan India, or the Desi Crime podcast that we were fond of as children. Detectives made a heartfelt plea for any information regarding the killer or the van spotted in CCTV footage earlier. Hilary and Trevor also appeared on the show, and it was Hilary's statement that had moved everyone. Quote, "It's the not knowing what she had been through, and just knowing how frightened she must have been, and we cannot get beyond that." End quote. Everyone in Britain was looking for Hannah's murderer, and much like Southampton police, the people did not disappoint. The phone was abuzz for the next few hours with people telling them anything and everything that might be relevant to the case. One lead caught the police's attention. A man named James Dennis, a supervisor for the Hazelwood Foods, noticed that one of his employees, 35-year-old Maninder Pal Singh Kohli, drove the same van. His delivery route passed the key location of the crime, and he had some injuries on his face the next day he came to work. Suspiciously, Kohli did not stay for the whole day of work. In fact, he had only completed half his round and left early complaining about a bad back. Now, Aishwarya, this is just a weird little detail, but Maninder Singh Kohli is like an amalgam of the names of the Nithari murderers, Muninder Singh
true.
Pandya and Surender Kohli. And when I read
That's
this, I was like,
true.
that's so weird.
That is so weird. I
Yeah.
didn't really notice that. I had forgotten those names.
Yeah.
But that's so eerie.
Forensic experts were rushed to the scene and conducted a thorough search of the van that was still in Dennis's possession. They found semen samples that matched the one on the crime scene and strains of hair. They also found a metal bat that had blood on it and was used to beat Hannah. Police finally had a suspect and enough evidence to pursue this lead. Maninder, originally from India, had moved to UK after marrying a British Indian woman, Shalinder. He had 2 children and lived in Southampton for about 8 years. His life was far from perfect, although it may seem like the typical immigrant dream. The neighbors recall overhearing arguments between him and his wife all through the night because of Maninder's drinking, smoking, cheating, and his gambling addiction.
There was another side to him. He drank heavily, he gambled heavily, he had a reliance on prostitutes, he had very much a double life that his wife was unaware of.
Police were able to locate his house only a kilometer from Hannah's. However, they found it completely abandoned. The house was stripped clean with no furniture or curtains. After an extensive search for Maninder, police were able to locate his wife Shalinder and his 2 kids. During police questioning, Shalinder revealed that Maninder had travelled to India to care for his comatose mother. When confronted with her husband's heinous crime, she refused to believe it and said that while her husband was far from an ideal human, he was not a rapist or a murderer. But she still cooperated when her children's DNA was used to verify the DNA found in the van, and a match was found. Maninder Pal Singh Kohli was the man that had brutally beaten, raped, and killed 17-year-old Hannah Foster. You know, an interesting observation that comes to my mind. Maninder thought Hannah was 15 years old because she said so in the transcript. He knew her to be younger, and yet that did not stop her. Not only was he raping someone, he was raping a literal child.
And a part of me wonders whether Hannah gave him a younger age just in case that
Mercy.
appealed to some human
Manin.
part of him, because he may look like an older man, he may have kids of his own or whatever. But it's crazy to me that seemingly normal people, a husband, a father to 2 children, it's just,
Maninder realized that the crime he had committed was not a well thought out or well executed one. So he had immediately booked Air India London to Delhi tickets and flew back to India on March 18, 2003. Southampton police's heart sank. Their rapid investigation had now led them to an international fugitive. It was nearly impossible to catch Maninder now because the UK and India had never participated in an extradition process before. Maninder could be anywhere in India now. There is also a possibility that he might not even be in India and have fled to some other country sharing a border with India. This was enough to make anyone give up or feel overwhelmed, but not Trevor and Hilary Foster, who lost their beautiful daughter by Maninder's hands. They were determined to get their Hannah the justice she deserved. Despite British police's efforts to engage Chandigarh police in the pursuit of Maninder, the response from Indian authorities was disappointing. Chandigarh police cited resource constraints, limited manpower, and the strained diplomatic relations between the two countries as obstacles to conducting a nationwide manhunt. They were dealing with similar cases to Hannah's domestically almost on a daily basis, which, while heartbreaking, underscored their point that Hannah's case was not a top priority. While there are theories that this case did not gain the attention it deserved because Kohli's own brother, Ishpreet, was a police officer, nothing could be confirmed. This setback, however, left the British authorities facing the task of apprehending an international fugitive without the support they had hoped for. They asked Shalinder to contact her husband's family in Chandigarh and ask about him. The family confirmed that Maninder was indeed with them. However, shortly after the call, Kohli fled town without informing his family of his whereabouts. For the next year, this investigation went cold due to the lack of initiative taken by the Indian police, and Kohli's location remained a mystery. The assailant had gotten away with it. Meanwhile, back in England, Southampton police were trying their best to find out more about this guy named Kohli. Shalinder revealed that the night after Hannah's murder, Maninder had come home with scratch marks all over his face. When she confronted him, he claimed he had been drinking at a pub and returned to his van to find someone else inside with the body of a teenage girl, attempting to steal the vehicle. A brawl ensued, during which Maninder received the scratches. Panicked by the presence of the dead body, he drove home. After eating and resting for a few hours, he took off with the van to dispose of the body.
What a peculiar story.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder why he revealed that detail in the story. Like trying to cover any future tracks that might, I don't know, maybe like if she was to find blood on his clothes, let's say, then he could say it was from that body that was randomly in his car. It's such an odd way to tell that story.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if this was a detail that he actually told her or a story they have brandished as the months have gone on, and he's told her, if the police talks to you, this is what you go with.
Oh, sure.
Because it's really difficult, it's not easy to come up with false alibis.
Right, yeah.
This is probably the best they could come up with, which too is incoherent.
How interesting.
Shalinder knew Hannah's body was in her husband's van, but both of them chose to ignore it and go on with their morning routine. While they ate and slept, a lifeless innocent girl lay just a stone's throw away from their house in that van. It is absolutely devastating that Shalinder did not report her husband right away or even prod him further about a dead body in his vehicle, like Aishwarya pointed out. Statistically, immigrants are less likely to report crimes to authorities as they fear that they'll be dragged into the investigation and might lose their visa, along with their life that they have worked so hard to build. Shalinder used that same argument, saying A, her husband was innocent, and B, she did not report him because he was an immigrant and could lose everything he had built over the span of 8 years. Upon further inquiry within the Sikh community, the police met Balinder Chahal, the secretary of Southampton's Gurudwara. Although Chahal and Kohli were not very close, they had a cordial relationship, and Chahal occasionally lent him money. On March 15th, the night after Hannah's murder, Kohli called Chahal multiple times, crying, sobbing. Chahal suspected that Kohli was calling to ask for money, and he was right. Maninder needed money to fly to India. Chahal, having had enough, firmly refused to support Kohli any further. Finally, on April 3rd, the police issued an international arrest warrant for Maninder Kohli, charging him with the kidnapping, rape, and manslaughter of Hannah Claire Foster. While Britain worked on establishing an extradition agreement with India, Kohli's whereabouts were unknown, and finding a South Asian man with limited English proficiency in a country as vast as India was impossible. Southampton detectives still tried their best. They travelled to India multiple times, announcing a reward for £70,000 to anyone who can give them Maninder's whereabouts. They questioned the Kohlis in Chandigarh and even asked the CBI, our Central Bureau of Investigation, to help, but they returned home empty-handed each time. In February of 2004, David Blunkett, a member of the House of Lords in the UK, similar to the upper house of the Parliament in India, he himself visited Punjab Police Academy, urging young police officers to help Hannah and get her the justice she deserved. Despite these efforts, the case remained largely unknown in India due to the insufficient media coverage, leaving much of the population unaware of the crime. Chapter 4: Cape of Good Hope. The Fosters were left to mourn their young daughter, fully aware that the man who had taken Hannah's life was still at large, living a normal life in India. While Hannah could never have the chance to spend time with her loved ones, become a doctor, or live the life she had ahead of her, her killer had escaped the country and continued to live freely. It was crushing, unfair, and deeply disappointing. But Hilary and Trevor could not let this slide. They decided that if two nations, two police forces, and two governments cannot deliver the justice their daughter deserved, they will do it themselves. On July 10th, 2004, 15 months after their daughter was brutally murdered, the Fosters boarded a flight to India, even though Hilary herself was battling breast cancer at the time. They planned to campaign for her justice over the next 10 days. Trevor Foster explained, quote, "I think there was an issue at the start of vengeance, but now it's reducing. If it wasn't, we would be on the same level as him. What we want now is justice because that would mean a lot to us and a lot to Hannah." End quote. In India, Hilary and Trevor were doing everything they could to raise awareness about Hannah's story. They were handing out leaflets, trying to talk to media houses, talking to politicians, and even setting up a 24/7 bilingual hotline for anyone that wants to provide information. Hilary Foster mentioned that she just wanted everyone to hear her daughter's story so that people like Maninder realize that they cannot get away by committing crimes as heinous as these, and girls like Hannah get a chance to live a life their daughter could not.
She didn't deserve to die so young, in such a callous and terrifying manner. Her killer must be brought to justice.
From the British High Commission to Punjab Police, Hannah's parents were doing everything they could to create awareness about Hannah. And once again, the people showed their support to the Fosters. Throughout this case, whether it be the Southampton police or the British population, and now even the Indian population, everyone tried their best to catch Hannah's killers, and it is one of the most moving things about this case, that silver lining.
And I think, Aryaan, that silver lining is a testament to their conviction and their love towards Hannah, where it's almost infectious. And that's always the case, is that when even one person stands up for justice, whether or not they're related to the victim, that standing up for justice, that courage is infectious and it rubs off on everyone. So that one act can have that effect on so many people.
I think I've talked about this on the podcast before. The first protest I ever participated in, I was so young, but was Nirbhaya's.
Right.
And it was because a few people decided to stand up for Nirbhaya that the entire nation did.
Absolutely.
So I don't see why in Hannah's case her parents standing up
Wouldn't have the same effect.
has that effect across the world.
Yeah.
The media picked it up big time. All the national news channels picked it up.
इस साल इंग्लैंड के शहर साउथहैम्पटन में बलात्कार
दबदबाई आंखों से हाना के पिता ने चंडीगढ़
Their press conference was a prime time news story for us.
Hannah's story was so real and raw that it moved everyone. The Indian public rallied to help catch Maninder, calling the hotline, putting up posters and attending the Fosters' press conferences. By July 15th, just 5 days later, the police had received over a dozen solid tips worth pursuing. One notable call came from a taxi driver, Jason Lepcha, who immediately recognized the face on the TV screen. He knew the man well. In fact, he had driven him around multiple times. The man identified himself as Mike Dennis, but Jason realized that Mike Dennis was actually Maninder Pal Singh Kohli.
I just turned to the TV and I just tried to look at him, And as soon as I saw him, I started to shiver myself, I knew this guy. I met him as a tourist. He was in my taxi, He told me he was a delivery driver back home in London. So he had his family up there. So he told me he had just come for vacation.
Kohli had been hiding in Darjeeling in West Bengal under the name of Mike Dennis. He was working at the Red Cross Center because he lied about being a doctor from the World Health Organization. Lepcha recalls that Mike would always buy the newspaper every morning, skim through it as quickly as possible, and then discard it. While peculiar, it was not an immediate point of concern, but I do find this detail interesting. It almost seemed as if he was looking for anything that might be about his crime in the paper, and then quickly throwing it away if there wasn't. Additionally, it was discovered that Kohli had remarried. One of his wife's friends recognized him and informed the police, noting his resemblance to her friend's husband. The police swiftly acted on these tips, as numerous individuals reported knowing a man named Mike Dennis who resembled Maninder. Local authorities in West Bengal promptly raided Kohli's home, only to find it abandoned once more.
Kohli had fled Kalimpong and he was actually with his wife Bharti, and they were making their way towards the Nepalese border.
In this entire ordeal, the detail that makes me even sadder, if that's even possible, is that Kohli feigned being a doctor, a dream that he had snatched away from Hannah. There's something very evil about that. Through questioning multiple sources, they learned that Kohli had boarded a train to Nepal that very morning, heading for Kathmandu. The journey to Kathmandu from the border is approximately 14 hours by road, indicating that Kohli was attempting to evade his capture by fleeing to another country once again. But not this time. Not again. The police knew that Nepal did not have an official extradition treaty with India or the UK at the time, and the clock was ticking against them to capture Maninder and bring Hannah justice. Delhi police immediately called every single police station near the Nepal border, explaining to them to not let this man slip through their hands. And while a lot of these local, smaller police stations had no idea, they jumped on their feet with one mission: catch Maninder Pal Singh Kohli. And alas, they captured him. Kohli was arrested in the poor farming community of Kalimpong, West Bengal, near the Nepal border. Hilary and Trevor immediately held a press conference thanking the Indian public in tears as the crowd cheered. Hannah will finally get the justice she deserved.
Never in our wildest dreams did we expect an arrest be made while we were in the middle of this short visit.
All the Indian journalists were around them, slapping on the back, just cheering with them. It had come so quickly, and I think, that they had sort of resigned themselves to the fact that they might not ever find him. But to actually be in India, be there, and know that he was coming down to Delhi, and that he would have his day in court and they would have their day in court, it was just a marvellous feeling.
Chapter 5: Two States. The full story of Kohli's evasion was revealed as he was questioned by the police. Upon fleeing England, Kohli first returned to his family home in Chandigarh and had gotten rid of his turban and beard. As a Sikh, Kohli's family frowned upon cutting your hair or shaving your beard, but this did not stop Kohli because he knew that this turban made him more recognizable to anyone who might come looking for him. Following his arrest, Maninder confessed to all his crimes, expressing that he was tired of running.
Actually, I done a crime over there. That's why I, ran from there to come India.
What happened?
I abducted, raped and killed Hannah Foster.
Why are you admitting this to the media? Why are you admitting this now?
Because I am already too tired, to run here and there. And I want to unburden myself. I totally want to tell the truth.
However, despite appearing cooperative and remorseful at the time, Kohli would switch completely once the case went to trial and was charged by the UK police. His defense would accuse the UK police of framing Maninder due to racism. Maninder's brother would also support these claims, consistently asserting his brother's innocence.
We want to say only one thing, that he is an innocent, and he has been framed only for being an Asian.
Maninder's sins eventually caught up to him. In 2007, 4 years after Hannah Foster's murder and 3 years after his arrest, Maninder Pal Singh Kohli became the first person in the history of the UK and India to be extradited.
Nobody had been successfully extradited under that particular piece of legislation between India and the UK.
During his time in India, Kohli faked illness and had over 35 appeals, which were all rejected. Can you imagine being the Fosters right now? Imagine flying to an unknown country to seek justice for your 17-year-old daughter, brutally taken from you, all while battling cancer. You're looking for an international fugitive, get him to confess, only for him to retract all his statements and act innocent in court and delay the progress of justice further by 3 years. And in doing so, using a very real issue like racism nefariously for his advantage. But the Fosters were incredibly brave. They believed in justice and continued to share Hannah's story, hoping the courts would see past Maninder's lies. And finally, Hannah's story and her kindness brought together two nations that had not seen eye to eye for over 60 years by that point. In October 2008, the case went to trial at Winchester Crown Court, and Maninder casted out another set of lies claiming that a gang had forced him to do such things to Hannah, and that explains the DNA evidence against him. But by November of the same year, Kohli, then 41 years old, was found guilty on account of rape, false imprisonment, manslaughter, and the murder of Hannah Claire Foster.
There was no emotion in him whatsoever. He was just completely without emotion. Will stay with me for a long time.
Hilary could finally know what happened to her daughter on the night of March 14, 2003 that changed her entire life, alongside her husband and her younger daughter. She could finally know what the final hour was like for Hannah. The prosecution laid out the events of the night. That night, Maninder had been drinking at a pub called the Mitre where he was alone. He went to the pub straight after work and had not changed, driving his work vehicle, the sandwich delivery van, to the pub. As he stepped outside, admittedly very drunk, he planned to drive home. It was then that he heard Hannah and Helen giggle on the street as they left Sobar around 10:30 p.m. He followed the two girls for some time, watching as Hannah waited at the bus stop while Helen left and then started walking alone. It almost seemed instinctual. He saw a girl walking alone and decided he wanted to harm her. The entire event unfolded in less than 10 minutes. In that short span, Maninder made the fateful decision to follow two girls and ultimately harm Hannah. He immediately got inside his van, drove in the direction in which Hannah was walking, parked adjacent to the street so that when she eventually catches up on foot, she would be parallel to his van, making it easy to abduct her. That is exactly what he did. He went on the street and talked to Hannah in an attempt to lure her into his van. That is when Hannah's 999 call was placed and we could hear the fragment of their conversation. Maninder soon realized that he was talking to a smart girl who was reluctant to leave with him or go towards his van and allegedly used force to drag her into the van. This is where he proceeded to rape Hannah. Mind you, this was all happening only 800 meters away from Hannah's home. In court, Kohli admitted that he tried to threaten Hannah to keep this a secret, but she refused and made it clear that she will tell the police about this incident. This is when something inside Maninder had snapped. He realized that leaving Hannah alive would destroy his life. She was going to go to the police, and he cannot get away with raping a young child of just 17. In his knowledge, only 15. He grabbed the metal bat later found in the van and proceeded to beat her with it into submission. When Hannah did not give up and put up a good fight, he grabbed her neck from behind and strangled her by wrapping his elbow around her throat and covering her mouth. He then got back to the driving seat and drove his van to his home, where he lived with his wife and two children, rested and ate.
Aryaan, I know that in that situation it would probably save Hannah's life, or at least have the option of saving her life now from Maninder's account if she did actually agree to him, if she pandered to his wishes, if she, agreed she wouldn't tell anyone, if she said, okay, I promise I won't ever talk to anyone about this ever again. But I just have so much respect. And I've heard stories of countless women. Obviously, it makes sense to agree with whatever your kidnapper and rapist and possible murderer is saying.
Yeah.
But I have so much respect for women and girls who just don't give in at that moment. I don't know, maybe it's just like a stupid part of me that likes that bit of vengeance, that last moment of defiance against someone who's violating you in this way. And maybe it's just really stupid of me to think that way, but I don't know.
I mean, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Although I would argue that in Maninder's case and in most of these cases, it is almost post hoc rationalization for the criminal to go, I would have let them live had they just said, because I think they would have done it either way. But to your
in
point,
that moment, the
for
kid
that
doesn't know
woman,
that.
for that girl, not even a
Yeah.
woman yet, about to become a woman, to stand up to her assailant and go,
Yeah.
no, you, because I'm still
Yeah.
going to go to the police.
Yeah.
I mean, hats off.
Yeah.
He parked his van and Hannah's dead body in his own driveway, walked up to his home as if it was a regular evening, and then told his wife the elaborate lie she shared later with the police. The next morning, he drove back to M27, where he ditched Hannah's body, proceeded to go to Portsmouth to get rid of her stuff, and then leave for India. Maninder Pal Singh Kohli had committed the heinous crime of rape and murder against an innocent young girl. His punishment? 24 years in prison. After evading both the British and Indian police, causing numerous obstacles in the pursuit of justice, and taking someone's life, he is scheduled to be released in 2030, 6 years from this episode airing.
What?
Yeah.
And that's the UK verdict.
That's the UK verdict. I don't know what to think about that.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to me.
No, obviously, like, these systems are in part for rehabilitation
I know,
as
yeah.
well, but in part they are for justice for the victim alone, and this
Yeah.
is not justice for the victim.
The amount of pain the Fosters endured to catch this man, the amount of efforts two nations put together, and this is the outcome they receive. Not life imprisonment with no chance of parole, but a minimum of 24 years behind bars, after which he will be a free man, free to walk the streets where once he took a girl's life. When we cover cases like rape and murder, it is always heartbreaking to see such young women get robbed of their lives while their murderers usually either get away with it or the justice is served after a painstakingly long amount of time. Whether it be Toya Cordingley's case where a murderer took years to be extradited, or Aruna Shanbag, or Hannah Foster, they were young, bright, kind and smart women who did not hurt anyone except be at the wrong place at the wrong time. Their crime? To exist. Hannah was to become a doctor. She was the pride and joy of her family. Hilary recalls that she wished she had kissed her daughter goodbye or hugged her when she left, that she looked at Hannah and told her how proud she is of her. But she never got the chance because a monster was out on the street that night with lust and murder on his mind. Hilary and Trevor lost their entire world because of Kohli, but the question stands as to what motivates these people to such violent, brutal and merciless acts. What about a woman's existence gives them the indication that they are one in charge of their lives and existence in this world? The Foster family had never been the same again. During press conferences or public appeals, Hilary and Trevor would often break down and sob about their Hannah. Hannah's memory lives on. In fact, Jason Lepcha, the cab driver who made Maninder's arrest possible, opened up a school for disadvantaged children which is named the Hannah Memorial Academy in Foster's memory from the very prize money he had received for his intel. This episode too is an attempt to keep her memory alive.
If you like what we do here at Desi Studios and absolutely love what we're wearing today, this is merch you can go buy all for yourself.
You can buy this Desi Crime merch in our YouTube store on the link down below at Kadak Merch. Keep the engines at Desi Studios rolling so we can pay our videographer right behind the camera to make these amazing episodes just for you.